Alan Turing, the Codebreaker of the Century. Part 1. The Making of a Genius. Sometimes it is the people no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. The Imitation Game, 2014. The Boy Who Questioned Everything. On a warm summer morning of the 23rd of June, 1912, in Maida Vale, London, a boy was born who would later be known as the father of computer science. His name, Alan Matheson Turing. His father, Julius Turing, worked in the Indian Civil Service. His mother, Ethel Sarah Stoney, came from a family of engineers. From the beginning, Alan's mind was different. At the age of 3, he began asking questions no one could answer, like, can thoughts be measured? Or, how do numbers know what they mean? Due to his father's work in India, young Alan was placed in the care of foster families, which made his early years emotionally distant. But this emotional solitude was paired with an internal world of logic and wonder. He was obsessed with patterns, clocks, and puzzles. Schooling the system. Turing's early education was tumultuous. At Sherborne School, a traditional British public school, his brilliance was often overshadowed by his lack of conformity. He disliked Latin, preferred numbers, and would rather solve equations than socialize. His mathematics teacher once noted, "If Alan doesn't buckle down to Latin and Greek, he will fail." Alan did fail at fitting in, but excelled beyond imagination in mathematics and science. He discovered Einstein's work on his own and began dabbling in quantum mechanics at an age when most boys were still mastering long division. Love, loss, and Christopher Morcom. At Sherborne, Alan formed a deep bond with another student, Christopher Morcom. The two shared a passion for science, particularly for the idea that the universe could be understood through numbers. But in 1930, tragedy struck. Morcom died suddenly of bovine tuberculosis. Alan was devastated. He retreated into solitude, questioning life, death, and consciousness. Christopher's death deeply influenced Alan's desire to understand the nature of thought. He began pondering whether human thinking could be replicated mechanically. This was more than academic, it was personal. He wanted to know if a machine could ever feel like Christopher did. Cambridge, the dawn of a theorist. Turing earned a scholarship to King's College, Cambridge, in 1931. At Cambridge, he thrived. In 1935, he was elected a Fellow of King's College for his work on probability theory. But it was in 1936 that he published a paper titled On Computable Numbers with an application to the Entscheidungs problem that would change the course of history. In this paper, he introduced the concept of a hypothetical machine, what we now call the Turing machine. This abstract machine could simulate any logical process. It was the blueprint for the modern computer. Little did the world know, this quiet man with eccentric habits was constructing the skeleton of the digital age. Part 2. The Warrior's Enigma and the Race Against Time. A world at war. As the 1930s gave way to chaos in Europe, Alan Turing was finishing his doctoral studies at Princeton University. He had studied under the great logician Alonzo Church and immersed himself in the growing mathematical discussions around logic, algorithms, and the limits of computation. In 1939, Turing returned to England. That same year, Adolf Hitler invaded Poland, and Britain declared war on Germany. The world was entering its darkest chapter, and Alan Turing's skills were about to become vital to the survival of the Allied powers. The call to Bletchley Park. The British government gathered its best minds in a secluded mansion known as Bletchley Park, the headquarters of the Government Code and Cipher School, GCCS. This was the nerve center of British code-breaking efforts. Turing, recruited for his genius in logic and mathematics, arrived at Bletchley in September 1939. He was assigned to Hut 8, the section responsible for decoding messages from the German Navy, including those encrypted by the terrifyingly complex Enigma machine. Cracking Enigma. The Enigma machine was used by the Nazis to encrypt military messages. It had billions of possible settings, which changed daily. German operators believed Enigma to be unbreakable. Turing thought otherwise. Building upon earlier Polish work on Enigma decryption, Turing designed a mechanical device called the Bombia machine that could quickly narrow down the possible settings of Enigma each day. The Bombay wasn't just a mechanical marvel, it was the first step toward automation in computing. It was an early model of a modern computer processing input, evaluating conditions and outputting results. Thanks to Turing and his team, Britain began reading critical German messages sometimes faster than the Germans themselves. The weight of secrecy. The work at Bletchley was so secret that even members of the British cabinet were unaware of its full impact. Turing's work saved millions of lives and shortened the war by at least 2 years, according to many historians. But the stress took a toll. Turing, a man who preferred logic to emotion, now lived under a veil of absolute secrecy. He couldn't share his triumphs, not with his mother, not with friends, not with anyone. He once quipped, "It is a bit like having the solution to the universe and not being allowed to speak of it." The man behind the machine. Despite the rigid and serious environment, Turing stood out. He was known for his quirks, chaining his mug to the radiator so no one would steal it, wearing a gas mask while biking due to allergies, and talking to his machines as if they were alive. But beyond these eccentricities lay a brilliant, driven man who shouldered one of the greatest secrets in modern history. Part 3. The Visionary Building the Thinking Machine. Victory, silence, and a new battlefield. When the war ended in 1945, the world erupted in celebration. Yet Alan Turing remained quiet. There were no medals, no recognition, no public thanks. The heroic work he and his colleagues at Bletchley Park had accomplished was buried beneath layers of official secrecy. Turing, ever the pragmatist, turned his attention elsewhere to a new question. If machines could calculate, could they also think? The Automatic Computing Engine, ACE. Turing joined the National Physical Laboratory, NPL, in London, and proposed one of the most visionary ideas in computing history, the Automatic Computing Engine, ACE, a general-purpose, stored program, digital computer. It was an ambitious design, faster and more complex than anything that had existed. Though the full ACE was never built during his time at NPL due to bureaucratic delays, a smaller prototype was completed in 1950, known as the Pilot ACE. His 1,946-paper proposed electronic calculator was arguably one of the first detailed plans for a modern digital computer. In it, Turing outlined the idea that a machine could store instructions and data in the same memory, a revolutionary step. Manchester and the first computer programs. Frustrated with slow progress at NPL, Turing moved to the University of Manchester in 1948. There, he began working on the Manchester Mark I, one of the first stored program computers. Turing also developed one of the earliest programming languages and helped formalize concepts that would later become standard in computing: subroutines, logic gates, conditional loops. But perhaps most significantly, Turing began to wonder whether machines could not only compute, but reason. The Turing test, Can Machines Think? In 1950, Turing published a landmark paper in Mind Journal titled Computing, Machinery, and Intelligence. In it, he asked a now famous question: can machines think? Instead of offering a philosophical answer, Turing proposed a practical one, the imitation game, now known as the Turing test. In the test, a human interrogator would converse via text with a machine and a person. If the machine could fool the interrogator into believing it was human, then it could be said to think. Turing predicted that by the year 2000, machines would be able to fool humans 30% of the time in 5-minute conversations. Though controversial at the time, the Turing test has become one of the most referenced benchmarks in discussions of artificial intelligence, chess, machines, and the mind. Turing believed that chess was a good test case for machine intelligence. Without access to a computer fast enough to run his program, he simulated a chess-playing machine by acting as the computer himself, calculating each move by hand using his own algorithm. Though crude, it was one of the first AI programs ever designed. Alan Turing wasn't just inventing the future, he was trying to give it a mind. Part 4. The Trial Genius on Trial. The secrets he couldn't keep. While Alan Turing was building the future of thinking machines, British society was still bound by the oppressive laws of the past. One of those laws criminalized homosexuality, labeling it a crime of gross indecency. Turing, an intensely private man, never made a secret of his attraction to men, at least not in his personal life. But in 1952, a relationship would put him directly in the path of Britain's legal system. The relationship that became a crime. Turing met Arnold Murray, a young man with whom he became romantically involved. After a burglary at Turing's home, he reported the crime to police and, during the investigation, candidly admitted to his relationship with Murray. What followed was not an investigation of the burglary, but of Turing himself. In 1952, he was arrested and charged under Section 11 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act 1885, the same law used decades earlier against playwright Oscar Wilde. Rather than deny who he was, Turing confessed. He was found guilty and offered a choice: prison or chemical castration, hormonal treatment with synthetic estrogen designed to suppress libido. Turing chose the latter, believing it would allow him to continue working. The treatment and its toll. The so-called treatment was brutal. Over the course of a year, Turing was subjected to regular injections of estrogen. His body changed, he grew breasts, his physical and emotional state deteriorated. The British government removed his security clearance, barring him from continuing his cryptographic consulting work. He was now ostracized by the very government he had once helped save. His reputation was tarnished, his career was halted, and worse, his spirit began to break. The isolation of a giant. Despite these devastations, Turing tried to continue his work. He published papers in biology and mathematics, explored morphogenesis, how patterns in nature like seashells and animal stripes emerge, and tinkered with early ideas of neural networks. But the weight of his sentence, the forced hormone treatments, and the social alienation began to erode his once unbreakable mind. Alan Turing, once surrounded by secrets of national importance, was now imprisoned by the secret of his identity. Part 5. The Mysterious Death Apple, Cyanide, and the Final Puzzle. A summer like no other. On the 7th of June, 1954, just 2 weeks before his 42nd birthday, Alan Turing was found dead in his home in Wilmslow, Cheshire. The scene was quiet, almost serene. By his bedside was a half-eaten apple. The official cause of death, cyanide poisoning. A post-mortem examination confirmed high levels of cyanide in his system. The inquest ruled it suicide, noting the apple may have been laced with the poison, inspired by Turing's love of fairy tales, particularly Snow White, where the poisoned apple plays a fatal role. But not everyone believed that narrative. The apple that was never tested. One of the most peculiar elements of Turing's death was the presence of the apple, which was never tested for cyanide. Though the coroner ruled the death a suicide, the lack of forensic confirmation opened the door to speculation. Some believed he had accidentally ingested cyanide fumes from a cyanide experiment he kept in his home laboratory. Turing had been known to work with dangerous chemicals, and he wasn't always careful. Others suggested something darker. Suicide? Or silencing? Turing's death occurred in the midst of Cold War paranoia, when homosexuals were labeled as potential security risks. He had been barred from classified work, and some theorized he may have still held sensitive knowledge about British or American intelligence operations. Could he have been silenced? The theory has no concrete evidence, but the timing, secrecy, and unusual circumstances surrounding his death have fed the fire for decades. His mother, Sarah Turing, refused to believe he had taken his own life. She insisted his death was accidental, caused by a laboratory mishap. Turing left no suicide note, the unfinished symphony. When Turing died, he left behind a world on the brink of technological revolution. His papers on morphogenesis remained unpublished, his notes on artificial intelligence were scattered, and his dream of a thinking machine was still decades from reality. In many ways, Turing's death was a premature silencing of a voice the world had just begun to understand, but his legacy was just beginning. Part 6. Resurrection, the Long Road to Recognition. The Forgotten Genius. For decades after Alan Turing's death, his name faded from public consciousness. His wartime work remained classified until the 1970s. Without public recognition, his immense contributions were known only within tight circles of scientists and mathematicians. He became a ghost in history, books a footnote in mathematics, a whisper in cryptography, a lost pioneer in computer science. While others were hailed as visionaries of the digital age, Turing was largely forgotten. A quiet return. In the 1980s and 1990s, as documents about Bletchley Park were declassified, Turing's name began to reemerge. Historians unearthed the truth about his role in breaking Enigma, helping to defeat the Nazi regime, and saving millions of lives. At the same time, the field of computer science matured, and scholars began to recognize that the theoretical foundation for all digital computing stemmed from Turing's 1936 paper. Books were published, documentaries produced, scholars gave lectures about this once-forgotten genius. The silence was finally breaking. Bletchley Park reborn. By the early 2000s, Bletchley Park had been transformed into a museum and national heritage site. Visitors from around the world came to see the once secret headquarters where Turing and his colleagues had waged their invisible war. Turing's original bomb machine was reconstructed, and his contributions were finally honored alongside the likes of Winston Churchill, whose famous quote echoed through the halls. The geese that laid the golden eggs and never cackled. The pardon movement. As recognition grew, so did outrage over how Turing had been treated. In 2009, a British computer scientist, John Graham Cumming, launched a petition demanding a formal apology from the UK government. The campaign gained traction, with support from scientists, historians, and even celebrities. Later that year, Prime Minister Gordon Brown issued a public apology saying, "On behalf of the British government and all those who live freely thanks to Alan's work, I am very proud to say, we're sorry. You deserved so much better." But activists wanted more than an apology. They wanted justice, royal pardon, and redemption. In 2013, after years of public pressure, Queen Elizabeth II issued a royal pardon for Alan Turing. The statement cleared his criminal record, posthumously recognizing that he had been punished not for a crime, but for being himself. Justice had come not from a court of law, but from the collective conscience of a nation. Yet for many, it was still not enough. Part 7. Legacy Eternal Turing's Impact on Our World Today. From digital foundations to artificial intelligence and beyond, the architect of the digital world. Alan Turing never lived to see the world he helped create, but his fingerprints are everywhere. Every time you open a laptop, unlock a phone, or ask a digital assistant a question, you're interacting with technology grounded in Turing's theories. From the central processing units, CPUs, in modern computers, to the code-breaking algorithms used in cybersecurity, Turing's vision is embedded in our technological DNA. Even in 1936, when no physical computers existed, Turing had already outlined the blueprint for computing a machine that could read instructions, store memory, process logic, and execute loops. This idea, the universal Turing machine, is the theoretical ancestor of all computers today. Artificial intelligence, the mind-machine emerges. Turing's question, can machines think, is no longer theoretical. It's a core question of the 21st century. His famous Turing test is now a benchmark in AI development. Chatbots, virtual assistants, autonomous vehicles, and language models all are attempts to pass that test. From Siri to ChatGPT, from Tesla's autopilot to AlphaGo's strategy games, we live in a world Turing imagined decades ago. He believed intelligence wasn't a soul or spark, but a process, one that could be reproduced with enough logic and machinery. Today's researchers in AI still cite his works as foundational. Turing and biology patterns in nature. Turing's final years were not spent on machines but on biology. His 1,952 paper on morphogenesis explored how patterns in nature, like zebra stripes, seashell spirals, and flower petals emerge from mathematical principles. Although overlooked during his life, this work later became influential in theoretical biology and even robotics and 3D modeling. His insight showed that the same mind that built thinking machines could also decode the secrets of life. Encryption and cybersecurity. In a world plagued by cyber attacks, data breaches, and surveillance, cryptography has become the backbone of digital trust. Turing's wartime experience in encryption and decryption made him one of the fathers of modern cryptology. His strategies, refined under pressure in Bletchley Park, form the conceptual basis for secure communication systems today. The evolution of cryptography owes much to the original codebreaker. Turing in popular culture. Over the decades, Alan Turing has evolved from a hidden figure to a cultural icon. His life-inspired books, documentaries, and one of the most acclaimed films of the 2010s, The Imitation Game, 2014, starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Turing. The film introduced millions to Turing's legacy and brought new attention to his personal struggles, scientific triumphs, and unjust fate. Schools named buildings after him. Statues were erected in Manchester and Bletchley. The Turing Award, often called the Nobel Prize of Computer Science, now honors those who carry on his legacy. Part 8. Immortality. What the World Owes Turing. A legacy of intellect, courage, and unfinished business. More than a scientist. Alan Turing was not just a mathematician, not just a computer scientist, not just a war hero. He was, above all, a symbol of what it means to live ahead of your time. He asked questions the world wasn't ready for. Can machines think? Can love exist between those society forbids? Can logic create lifelike patterns in biology? He lived in a time when brilliance didn't protect you from persecution, when a man could help save civilization and still be destroyed by its laws. His life forces us to ask, what do we lose when we punish difference? What genius have we silenced without ever knowing? The moral reckoning. Turing's story is more than a historical narrative, it's a moral lesson. When society criminalizes identity, it wastes minds and kills futures. Turing's prosecution was a violation of human dignity, but also a wound to human progress. Imagine what else he could have discovered had he lived longer, what algorithms, what theories, what breakthroughs we'll never know. Turing's name should be engraved not only in the history of science, but in the Charter of Human Rights. LGBTQ+ icon. In recent years, Turing has become a powerful symbol for the LGBTQ+ community. He lived authentically at a time when doing so was criminal. He faced the full force of an unjust system and never denied who he was. Every year, during Pride celebrations across the world, his name is invoked not just as a hero of computing, but as a martyr of identity. In a world still fighting for equality, Turing stands tall, a man of code and conscience, of reason and rebellion. The Turing Law. In 2017, the UK passed the Alan Turing Law, posthumously pardoning thousands of men convicted under outdated anti-homosexuality laws. Turing's name thus became a beacon of restorative justice, a reminder that laws, like machines, must be rewired when they fail humanity. Turing once said, "We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done." He was right. There is still much to be done in science, in ethics, in society. The unfinished genius. Turing's legacy is not a closed book. His ideas continue to grow in quantum computing, AI ethics, cybersecurity, and even philosophical debates about consciousness. To this day, no machine has definitively passed the Turing test, but many are getting close. And with every step forward, his spirit walks beside us, whispering equations, unraveling mysteries, challenging assumptions. Part 9. Timeline of Turing's life, a chronicle of brilliance and suffering. Key moments that defined a genius and changed the world. 1912. The birth of a mind. The 23rd of June. Alan Matheson Turing is born in Maida Vale, London, to Julius and Ethel Turing. 1926, 1931, education and awakening. Attends Sherborne School in Dorset. Shows early brilliance in mathematics and science, but struggles in classical subjects. Forms a profound emotional and intellectual bond with classmate Christopher Morcom. 1930, First Tragedy. Christopher Morcom dies unexpectedly from tuberculosis. Turing is devastated, begins reflecting deeply on consciousness, soul, and the mind themes that will shape his future theories. 1931, 1934, Cambridge years. Enrolls at King's College, Cambridge, to study mathematics. Graduates with first-class honors. Elected a Fellow of King's College at age 22. 1936, Theoretical Revolution. Publishes on computable numbers, introducing the concept of a universal machine ladder known as the Turing machine. Establishes the theoretical foundation for computer science. 1938, Doctorate at Princeton. Travels to the United States, studies under Alonzo Church at Princeton University. Completes his Ph.D. on ordinal logic. 1939, returned to Britain and the outbreak of WWII. Britain declares war on Nazi Germany. Turing joins the Government Code and Cipher School at Bletchley Park. 1940, 1945, cracking Enigma. Designs the bomb machine, which helps crack encrypted Nazi messages. Plays a central role in deciphering the German naval Enigma. Work estimated to have shortened the war by 4 years. 1945, post-war silence. Awarded the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for wartime service, but work remains classified. Begins work at the National Physical Laboratory, NPL, on the Automatic Computing Engine, ACE. 1948, the Manchester Machine. Moves to the University of Manchester to work on one of the world's first stored program computers. Explores AI, machine logic, and pattern formation. 1950, the Turing test. Publishes Computing, Machinery, and Intelligence, proposing the Turing test as a measure of machine intelligence. 1951, elected Fellow of the Royal Society. Recognized for his pioneering contributions to mathematics and logic. 1952, conviction and castration. Arrested for homosexual acts, then illegal in the UK, chooses chemical castration over prison, loses security clearance and is barred from further cryptographic work. 1954, The Mysterious End. The 7th of June, found dead at home from cyanide poisoning. Officially ruled a suicide, but circumstances remain disputed. A death in Ofura. 2009, Apology at Last. British Prime Minister Gordon Brown issues an official apology for Turing's treatment. 2013, The Royal Pardon. Queen Elizabeth II grants Turing a posthumous royal pardon. 2017, The Turing Law. UK government enacts a law named after Turing, pardoning thousands convicted under historical anti-homosexuality laws. 2021, A Place on the 50 Pounds. Note, Alan Turing's image is featured on the new 50 pounds polymer banknote, honoring his scientific legacy and personal courage. Part X, scene by scene 20 visual moments for film or documentary. Dramatic reenactments of Turing's most defining episodes. The Boy Who Asked Why. 1918. Setting: a quiet garden in southern England. Young Alan, age 6, is disassembling his father's clock with surgical precision. Dialogue: Father: Alan, what are you doing? Alan, calmly: I want to know why it ticks. Mood: curious, innocent, foreshadowing genius. The Bond with Morecambe. 1928. Setting: Sherborne School Science Lab. Alan and Christopher are experimenting with magnets. Montage: they read Einstein together, build small electric motors, laugh over failed chemistry experiments. Mode: deep friendship, intellectual awakening. Los 1930. Setting: dormitory at Sherborne. Alan receives a letter. Christopher has died. Silent shot: Alan alone in his room, staring at a photograph. Mood: heart-wrenching grief, the seed of emotional isolation. The machine in his mind. 1936. Setting: Cambridge Library, filled with chalkboards. Turing furiously scribbles diagrams of an abstract machine. Voiceover: excerpts from On Computable Numbers. Mood: eureka moment of mathematical revelation. Arrival at Bletchley Park. 1939. Setting: gated entrance to Bletchley. Turing arrives with a briefcase, glances around suspiciously. Dialogue: Officer: you're late. Turing: I'm early. The war is late. Mood: mysterious, suspenseful. Designing the bomb. 1940. Setting: dimly lit workshop. Turing sketches diagrams of gears, rotors, switches. Montage: engineers build prototype. Machine whirs, clunks, lights flicker. Mood: determination, brilliance under pressure. Victory in silence. 1941. Setting: secret control room. Code cracked. Tense silence. Turing: we just sank 3 U-boats, but we tell no one. Mood: triumph laced with tragedy. The gas mask in the chain 1000. 942. Setting: Bletchley Cafeteria. Turing walks in wearing a gas mask, sipping tea from a mug chained to the radiator. Colleagues chuckle. Mood: eccentric genius, comic relief. The Unspoken Love. 1943. Setting: flashback to Christopher's photo on Turing's desk. He whispers, "You would have liked this machine." Mode: melancholic, poetic. End of war. 1945. Setting: V-Day celebrations. Streets filled with cheering crowds. Turing walks quietly through them, alone. Mood: isolation despite victory. Ace 1946. Setting: National Physical Laboratory. Turing unveils his blueprint for the automatic computing engine. Mood. Visionary genius meets bureaucratic resistance. The Turing Test 1950, setting University Lecture Hall. Turing debates a professor on machine intelligence. Quote, "If a machine can fool a human into thinking it's human, does it not think?" Mood. Philosophical, provocative. Chess with a Machine 1951. Setting. Turing manually plays chess using his algorithm, acting as both machine and man. Mood. Childlike wonder meets scientific rigor. The Arrest 1952. Setting. Police interview room. Turing confesses, "Yes, I was with Arnold. I see no crime in love." Mood. Harrowing, unjust. The Hormones 1952, 1953. Setting. Bathroom mirror. Turing injects himself, removes shirt, notices breast growth. No dialogue. Mood. Humiliation, inner decay. The Apple 1954. Setting. Wilmslow, Turing's home. He gently places a half-eaten apple on his nightstand. Cyanide experiment bubbles faintly in background. Mood. Ominous, tragic. The Discovery, the 8th of June, 1954. Setting. Police enter the house. Camera pans across the apple, the bed, the untouched coat. Mood. Cold finality. The Apology 2009. Setting. Parliament. P.M. Gordon Brown speaks. Allen and thousands like him were treated appallingly. On behalf of Britain, we're sorry. Mood. Bitter justice. The Banknote 2021. Setting. A new 50 note slides off a printing press. It bears Turing's face. Mood. Eternal legacy. The future thinking timeless. Setting. A modern classroom. A child taps on a tablet. Behind her, a poster of Turing. Teacher. That man imagined this long before it existed. Mood. Hopeful, immortal. Part 11. Turing quotes his words and what others said about him. Wisdom, warnings, and everlasting echoes. Turing in his own words. These quotes reveal the depth, curiosity, and quiet rebellion in Turing's mind. We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. Alan Turing, 1890. Spoken at the edge of the digital revolution, this quote encapsulates his visionary nature and pragmatic optimism. Instead of trying to produce a program to simulate the adult mind, why not rather try to produce one which simulates the child's? Turing on artificial intelligence. A revolutionary idea suggesting that intelligence is learned, not just pre-programmed. It is possible to invent a single machine which can be used to compute any computable sequence. From uncomputable numbers, 1936. With this statement, he predicted the modern computer before it physically existed. I'm not ashamed of who I am. What I did was honest. Turing. Reportedly during police interrogation, 1952, these brave words were said when truth brought punishment, not freedom. Mathematical reasoning may be regarded as the exercise of a combination of intuition and ingenuity. Turing, 1939. He reminded us that logic wasn't enough, creativity was also essential. What others said about Alan Turing. We're sorry, you deserve so much better. UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown, 2009, a public apology that echoed across time, restoring dignity to a man long dishonored. No single person was more responsible for the Allied victory over Nazi Germany than Alan Turing. Winston Churchill, as recounted by later historians. An astounding acknowledgement of his secret yet monumental role in history. The founding father of computer science. Time magazine, 1999. When naming the most influential minds of the 20th century, Turing's name was etched in stone. His life was one of the great tragedies of the 20th century. Dr. Andrew Hodges, Turing's biographer, a scholar who spent decades understanding the brilliance and the heartbreak of Turing's story. Turing's death was the world's loss. We lost not only a hero, but an entire future he might have built. LGBTQ+ advocate Peter Tatchell. A reminder that injustice steals not only lives, but progress. Turing's Law is our chance to correct a history of injustice, and we name it after him so we never forget why. UK Parliament Debat 2017, a powerful political declaration fusing memory with reform. These words, spoken across decades and continents, form a mosaic of reverence, remorse, and remembrance. Part 12. What if Turing had lived? Alternate futures, unwritten codes, the genius the world was not ready for, and what we might have lost. The lost decades. Alan Turing died at 41 years old in the middle of his intellectual prime. What might the next 30 or 40 years have held if he had lived? Imagine the 1960s with Turing debating early cyberneticists and AI theorists, the 1970s with Turing pioneering machine learning or neural networks, the 1980s with Turing at the first AI conferences, watching the birth of personal computing. Instead, we lost a man whose ideas were decades ahead of his time. Quantum computing pioneer? Turing understood not just digital computation, but also the philosophical nature of information. Many scientists believe he would have contributed meaningfully to the emerging field of quantum computing. He pondered questions of randomness, probability, and uncomputability, central ideas in quantum theory. With his insight, he may have anticipated entanglement-based computation or created a whole new branch of theoretical physics. The father of AI ethics? Long before the dangers of machine autonomy became clear, Turing asked, "What happens when a machine thinks?" If he had lived, he might have been the first to warn of AI misuse, biases, or surveillance risks, all while continuing to inspire human-like thinking machines. He could have been the one to frame AI ethics, balancing technical achievement with human dignity. The programming languages that might have been. Turing was already designing his own logic for programming computers. Had he lived, we might have seen a programming language designed by Alan Turing himself, elegant, powerful, maybe called T-code or Alan. What kinds of algorithms, operating systems, or theories might he have conceived? Would computer science education today begin not with Python or C, but with Turing's syntax? Biology and the code of life. In the last years of his life, Turing had turned his attention to morphogenesis, the mathematical modeling of biological shapes and growth. He was laying early foundations for what would later become systems biology, genetic algorithms, and even parts of artificial life studies. Had he lived into the era of DNA sequencing, might Turing have helped crack the genetic code just as he had cracked Enigma? An activist voice for freedom. If Turing had survived the state's persecution, might he have become a public advocate for LGBTQ+ rights? Imagine a world where the father of computer science also became a beacon of civil rights, fighting to ensure others would never face what he had endured. His voice could have transformed legal battles into ethical awakenings. A world that listened. In this alternate world, Turing might have been knighted, awarded the Nobel Prize, or even headed the Royal Society. He could have walked into the first AI laboratory, not as a forgotten martyr, but as a living prophet of the future. He might have mentored thousands of scientists and inspired millions more, but we silenced him. We, as a society, allowed a system to crush the man who helped save it. We extinguished a mind capable of shaping centuries. Part 13. Lessons from Turing, Humanity, Machines, and the Ethics of Intelligence. What Alan Turing teaches us about progress, prejudice, and possibility. Machines are tools, but ethics must guide them. Alan Turing taught us that machines could think, compute, and even converse. But he also warned implicitly that the builders of machines must act with moral foresight. Technology without ethics becomes a weapon. Knowledge without empathy becomes tyranny. In the age of AI, facial recognition, algorithmic control, and surveillance, Turing's quiet warning echoes louder than ever. Just because we can build something doesn't mean we should unless we also ask, for whom and at what cost? Difference is not a crime. Turing's conviction wasn't just unjust, it was civilizationally foolish. The world needs minds that think differently. His persecution reminds us that bigotry isn't just morally wrong, it's a threat to human progress. For every person silenced by law, hate, or fear, we risk losing not only a life, but a revolution of thought. The justice that arrived too late. The apology from Gordon Brown in 2009, the royal pardon in 2013, and the Turing Law in 2017 were necessary but incomplete. They restored dignity to Turing's name but could never restore the decades we lost. His death teaches us that redemption delayed is redemption denied. Justice must be proactive, not reactive. If it comes after death, it's not justice, it's regret. Progress is fragile. Turing cracked codes that saved millions and accelerated the Allied victory in WWII. He laid the foundation of digital technology, yet he died, labeled a criminal. His life reveals that progress and prejudice can exist side by side, and that it takes active vigilance to protect the former from being swallowed by the latter. His story teaches us to guard against the illusion that scientific or social advancement automatically means ethical enlightenment. Humanity is not a formula. Turing could reduce ideas to logic and code, yet he understood the soul of what makes us human. He saw that love, loss, and identity could not be computed, only honored. His life asks, can we design machines with intelligence without losing sight of compassion? And it warns, don't become so obsessed with programming artificial minds that we devalue real ones. The Turing Imperative. If we are to honor Turing truly, we must go beyond building machines that think. We must build societies that care. We must support eccentricity, nurture diversity, and protect those who challenge the status quo. Because the next Alan Turing may be a child who stutters, a refugee with a brilliant mind, or a teenager coding in secret, afraid to be seen. Alan Turing's life teaches us not just how computers work, but how humans must live with courage, creativity, and conscience. Part 14, Global Recognition, How Countries, Schools, and Scientists Keep Turing's Name Alive. Honors, tributes, and a legacy that transcends borders. The Alan Turing Institute, United Kingdom, established in 2015, the Alan Turing Institute is the UK's National Centre for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. Located at the British Library in London, it unites researchers from across academia and industry to tackle real-world challenges using machine learning and ethical AI. Its name reflects not only respect, but a commitment to carry Turing's intellectual and ethical legacy into the future. The Turing Award, the Nobel of Computing, created by the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, in 1966, the A.M. Turing Award is widely regarded as the highest honor in computer science. Awarded annually, it recognizes individuals for major contributions to the computing world, from inventors of programming languages to AI pioneers. Winners include Donald Knuth, 1974, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, 2004, TCP IP, Tim Berners-Lee, 2016, World Wide Web, Jeffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, and Jan LeCun, 2018, Deep Learning. Turing's name thus crowns the elite of a field he helped birth. The 50 pounds banknote, A Nation's Face of Genius, In 2021, the Bank of England revealed its new 50 pounds polymer banknote featuring none other than Alan Turing. The note includes a photo of Turing mathematical formulas from his 1,936 paper, a diagram of the bomb machine, a quote, "This is only a foretaste of what is to come." This honor placed Turing among the very few individuals whose portrait represents national identity and pride. Statues and monuments. Manchester, England. A life-size bronze statue of Turing sits on a bench in Sackville Park. The bench is inscribed, "Father of Computer Science, Mathematician, Logician, Wartime Codebreaker, Victim of Prejudice, Chile, California, USA." A bust of Turing stands at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, honoring his role in computing's evolution. Chiche, Barcelona, Spain. A plaque commemorates Turing's influence on global computer science. These statues aren't just art. They are reminders in metal and stone of how far the world has come and how far it still must go. Schools and centers named after him. Dozens of institutions around the world carry his name, including Alan Turing High School in Manchester, Turing College at the University of Kent, Turing Research Centers across Europe and North America. These spaces teach not only coding and algorithms, but also compassion and justice, drawing on Turing's life story to inspire young minds. Turing around the world. Turing's legacy is international. From Tokyo to Toronto, Sao Paulo to Seoul, students and professionals study his theories, simulate Turing machines, and debate the implications of his imitation game. In India, research centers include Turing in curricula on computing. In Germany, exhibitions explore his role in World War II. In the U.S., high school students write essays on his moral and intellectual courage. His influence knows no borders. Turing in Cultural Memory. Beyond institutions and awards, Turing appears in television series like The Codebreakers, biographies, especially Alan Turing, The Enigma by Andrew Hodges, poems, documentaries, and even children's books. Turing Fest, a tech conference in Edinburgh. Each instance ensures his name stays alive in the minds of new generations. Part 15. Turing's enduring influence in pop culture, science, and imagination. From cinema to science fiction, from philosophy to poetry. The Imitation Game, 2014. The Oscar-nominated film The Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Alan Turing, brought Turing's story to the global mainstream. It portrayed his struggle at Bletchley Park, the social rejection he faced, his romantic yearning for Christopher Morcom, his persecution, and eventual death. The film dramatized history, but it humanized Turing for millions, making him more than a name in a textbook. It presented him as what he truly was, a genius, a savior, a victim. The film closed with a heart-wrenching reminder. 100 years from now, people will say that this was the moment when the age of machines began. And it was Alan Turing who gave us that moment. Biographies and literature. Turing's life inspired a literary canon. Alan Turing, The Enigma by Andrew Hodges, 1983, a definitive biography that served as the basis for The Imitation Game. The Man Who Knew Too Much by David Levitt, 2006, a more personal, poetic retelling of Turing's struggles. Turing's Cathedral by George Dyson, 2012. Though broader in scope, it explores how Turing's theories birthed the digital age. In fiction, Turing often appears in alternate histories, science fiction tales, and even graphic novels, reimagining his legacy in fantastical ways. Turing in science fiction, Turing's question, "Can machines think?" is the spiritual core of science fiction. Authors like Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick, and Arthur C. Clarke built upon his ideas when crafting androids, AI rebellions, and consciousness simulations. Films like Blade Runner, Her, Ex Machina, and Westworld all explore the Turing test, sometimes explicitly, sometimes as the central premise. Even HAL 9000 from 2001. A Space Odyssey is a shadow of Turing's original vision, a machine that speaks, thinks, and reasons, but perhaps lacks a conscience. Theater and art. Breaking the Code, 1986, a play by Hugh Whitemore, dramatized Turing's life and persecution long before the public apology. It ran in London and on Broadway. Visual artists have created installations using binary code, morphogenesis patterns, and even interactive AI to reflect Turing's impact. Dance companies and multimedia theater groups have performed pieces interpreting his struggles, often blending mathematics, identity, and movement. Music inspired by Turing. Turing has been the subject of symphonies and electronic compositions, spoken word albums blending his writings with ambient sound, opera productions like The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing, 2023. These works ask, can machines create beauty? Can code express grief? Turing's life has become a musical metaphor for lost genius, silence, and rebirth. Turing in Philosophy and Futurism. Modern philosophers reference Turing when discussing consciousness and qualia, free will versus determinism, the ethics of artificial agents. Thinkers like Daniel Dennett, Nick Bostrom, and Yuval Noah Harari cite Turing's legacy when warning about the existential risks of AI or when debating the future of mind-machine interaction. Turing's legacy is not bound to science. It is also existential, ethical, and eternal. Turing as a symbol. In popular imagination, Turing now represents the brilliance misunderstood, the rebel punished for truth, the pioneer lost too soon, the icon resurrected. He is as likely to appear in a university lecture as on a T-shirt, a Pride Parade banner, or a tech company mural. His story transcends time and discipline. Part 16, Building a Better Future, the Turing Legacy in Education, AI, and Law. How his vision lives on in classrooms, code, and constitutions. Turing in Education. Across the globe, Turing's ideas are now essential to curricula in computer science, mathematics, philosophy of mind, ethics and law, AI, and robotics. Key topics taught include the Turing machine, core to computational theory, the halting problem, the idea that some problems can never be solved algorithmically, the Turing test, foundations of AI and machine intelligence, Turing's persecution, ethics, justice, and the history of human rights. His life is now a case study in both genius and injustice, helping students understand the human cost of prejudice and the ethical dimensions of innovation. Turing's impact on modern AI research. In AI labs across the world, Turing's legacy lives on in natural language processing, machine learning, cognitive computing, human-AI interaction. Every chatbot, personal assistant, and autonomous system built today is measured implicitly or explicitly against Turing's vision. Google's DeepMind, OpenAI, IBM Watson, and Meta AI all cite his works in their foundational model. AI researchers often ask, can a machine pass the Turing test? Should we build machines that only imitate humans or also care like them? How do we measure intelligence in non-human entities? Turing laid not just a technical framework, but a philosophical one for AI, law, ethics, and digital rights. Turing's persecution has become a rallying point in the global movement for LGBTQ+ rights, digital privacy, ethical oversight of AI, algorithmic transparency. Laws today are increasingly shaped by the recognition that algorithms can discriminate, code can reinforce bias, intelligence must be paired with empathy. His name is invoked in policy debates, academic ethics boards, and parliamentary sessions reminding lawmakers that progress is fragile unless justice is preserved. The Turing test of society. In many ways, the real Turing test today is not for machines, it's for us as a civilization. Can we build technology that enhances humanity without eroding it? Can we detect bias in our algorithms and in ourselves? Can we protect the next Alan Turing instead of punishing them? Turing's life is the ultimate litmus test for ethical progress. Global Tech Codes of Conduct. Inspired in part by historical cases like Turing's, many tech companies and research institutions now require AI ethics guidelines, bias audits in algorithms, transparency in data usage, accountability for automated decisions. Turing's legacy, especially his ethical brilliance and his tragic silencing, fuels these reforms. A blueprint for the future. Turing gave us more than a machine. He gave us a method to think, a mirror to reflect, a model to build upon, and perhaps most importantly, a mandate that intelligence, human or artificial, must be guided by freedom, justice, and dignity. Part 17. Turing in the classroom, teaching future generations to think, question, and create. How students learn from a man who never stopped asking why. A name spoken with wonder. In schools from Manchester to Mumbai, from New York to Nairobi, the name Alan Turing is spoken with reverence. Not as a distant historical figure, but as someone whose life speaks directly to students today. Whether they are learning logic gates, programming their first chatbot, or writing essays on civil rights, students are taught that Turing's brilliance was matched only by his bravery. Turing in primary and secondary schools. In classrooms for young learners, Turing's story is often presented as a hero's journey of discovery, a cautionary tale about prejudice and injustice, an example of thinking differently as a strength. Children are encouraged to ask questions like, what is a computer? Can machines really think? Why was Turing punished for who he was? These early questions become the seeds of empathy, critical thinking, and curiosity. Computer science curricula. Turing's legacy forms the bedrock of modern computer science education. In high school and university courses, students explore Turing machines and the concept of computation, undecidability, and the halting problem. The origin of programming languages, early AI theory through the imitation game. His post-war work in morphogenesis and pattern recognition, he's introduced not just as a mathematician, but as a story, a tale of a man whose ideas were bigger than his time. Philosophy and ethics courses. Turing also plays a key role in the humanities. In philosophy classes, his writings prompt questions about what defines a mind? Can machines feel or just simulate? What makes a question unanswerable? In ethics seminars, his persecution is studied as a case in societal failure, state injustice, the importance of protecting minority voices. Thus, Turing bridges science and philosophy, logic and law, intellect and identity, teaching empathy through Turing. Many educators use Turing's biography as a tool for social-emotional learning. By examining his pain, isolation, and perseverance, students discuss bullying and marginalization, standing up for one's truth, the cost of silence. One teacher in Australia described it this way: Turing helped my students see that genius is fragile, that justice matters, that history is made by those who ask questions no one else dares to. Project-based learning, inspired by Turing. Around the world, Turing's life inspires hands-on projects. Build a basic Turing machine using Lego. Create your own AI chatbot and test it against the Turing test. Design a poster campaign on historical injustices like Turing's. Write a play or short film reimagining the final days of his life. Compose a poem from the perspective of the bomb machine. These projects blend creativity with computation, ethics with engineering, inspiring the next generation of Turing-like minds. Students who once struggled with feeling different, neurodivergent, LGBTQ+, introverted, eccentric, find strength in Turing's story. They say, if Alan Turing could change the world, maybe I can too. Educators report that Turing connects deeply with students who feel overlooked and helps them see their unique thinking as a superpower. The classroom as a place of redemption. In teaching Turing, classrooms don't just educate, they redeem. They correct the record, they elevate the silenced, they turn shame into triumph. Every student who learns his name becomes part of a chain of remembrance that stretches far beyond mathematics. Part 18. The Turing Renaissance: How Artists, Coders, and Activists Are Reimagining His Legacy. Resurrecting the Genius Through Modern Art, Code, Activism, and Memory. Artists Paint the Code. Alan Turing's life, complex, abstract, tragic, and triumphant, is irresistible to visual artists. Across the world, creators use his life as a canvas for expression. Some paint binary code merging into human faces. Others craft portraits of Turing made entirely from circuitry, machine parts, or lines of handwritten code. Street murals in London, San Francisco, Berlin, and Mumbai depict his solemn gaze, a man who cracked Nazi codes but couldn't crack society's silence. Bioart and Turing patterns. Turing's final research into morphogenesis inspired artists in biology, 3D, modeling, and algorithmic sculpture. Turing patterns' mathematical simulations of spots and stripes are now projected in art installations, printed on textiles, used in generative design software. In digital exhibits, viewers walk through immersive rooms of morphing organic patterns animated by the very equations Turing wrote in his notebooks. Games, VR, and digital tributes. Coders have developed games and virtual reality experiences exploring the logic of Turing machines, his WWI efforts at Bletchley Park, the emotional struggles of his final years. One VR exhibit titled Turing, Mind and Machine allows users to enter the mind of Turing, shifting between his logical puzzles and personal memories. In Minecraft, entire digital replicas of Bletchley Park have been built in his honor. LGBTQ+ advocacy and artistic protest. Activists embrace Turing not just as a symbol of brilliance, but as a martyr of state persecution. His face appears on pride flags, in queer history scenes. In protest, art opposing anti-LGBTQ+ laws around the world. A performance piece titled Alan toured Europe in 2022, blending dance, spoken word, and film to explore his love, imprisonment, and legacy. Coding communities and hackathons. In the tech world, Turing is not just remembered, he is revered. Hackathons named Turing Fest, the Imitation Challenge, and Codebreaker's Lab invite young developers to build projects that tackle misinformation, build ethical AI, create educational tools inspired by Turing's life. One team in Kenya developed an AI tool that teaches Turing machines to teens in 3 languages. Turing in music and sound. Turing's legacy has inspired ambient albums using machine-generated melodies, AI-composed symphonies titled The Enigma Variations Reimagined, a digital opera that sings in code, alternating between binary and human lyrics. In 2021, a composer created a piece that mapped Turing's hormone therapy cycle to a rising dissonance in sound, evoking the pain he endured without words. Poets of code. Writers and poets draw inspiration from Turing's contradictions. The man of logic who died for love. The builder of machines who believed in intuition. The war hero erased by peacetime law. Poems titled The Apple, The Machine Cried, and Codebreaker's Elegy appear in anthologies, performances, and online tributes. Digital memorials and interactive tributes. Online, hundreds of memorial websites, animated stories, and interactive timelines are dedicated to Turing. Users can walk through his life, room by room, simulate a Turing machine, leave a message or code snippet in his honor. These digital spaces are alive, updated by students, scientists, and fans who feel indebted to a man who never saw his revolution come true. The Turing Renaissance is just beginning. What connects all of this? A global, organic movement to resurrect Turing not only as a pioneer, but as a person. He is no longer just a man in a black and white photo. He is a digital symbol, gay icon, computing prophet, canvas for art, code for justice. The Turing Renaissance is not a monument. It is a living network of thought, expression, and remembrance. Part 19. The Final Years in Detail. A Quiet Descent and an Unfinished Symphony. An intimate chronicle of Turing's last seasons, 1952, 1954. 1952, the year everything changed. At 40 years old, Alan Turing had accomplished more than most people could in 5 lifetimes. He had revolutionized the foundations of computation, designed decryption machines that changed the course of World War II, proposed the Turing test, helped launch the first computer at Manchester, ventured into biology and the mathematics of form. And yet, in March 1952, he found himself not at a symposium or university, but at a police station accused, not of espionage or corruption, but of loving another man. His relationship with Arnold Murray, a 19-year-old from Manchester, was no secret to him, but it was illegal under British law. Turing refused to lie, refused to hide, and so he was charged under Section 11 of the Criminal Law Amendment Act, 1885, the same archaic law used to destroy Oscar Wilde. He pled guilty, and so began the unraveling. The year of injections. In lieu of prison, Turing agreed to undergo chemical castration, a series of estrogen injections meant to eliminate his libido. The side effects were brutal. He developed gynecomastia, breast tissue. He experienced weight gain, fatigue, emotional turbulence. He lost the clear focus he once wielded like a scalpel. His body was being reshaped by the state, not by his will. He was made to feel like a failed experiment of his own country, cut off from the world he helped save. Turing's conviction stripped him of his security clearance, preventing him from continuing cryptographic consulting with the government. His previous work, once secret and revered, was now sealed even tighter, and he was no longer welcome behind those closed doors. He was isolated, professionally trapped in a kind of intellectual house arrest. Retreat into science. Even under pressure, Turing did not stop thinking. He poured his remaining energy into morphogenesis, trying to explain how animal patterns like stripes and spirals emerged, how beauty in biology could come from math. He began to write his final scientific papers, some of which would not be published until decades after his death. He experimented at home with cyanide, not as a weapon, but as part of gold electroplating experiments. He remained, to the end, curious. Letters and loneliness. Friends noticed a change. Though still brilliant in conversation, Turing had grown more erratic, more introspective, less social. In letters, he joked darkly about his situation. In public, he masked the pain. In private, he wandered corridors of logic that no one else could follow. He spoke often of fairy tales, especially Snow White and the poisoned apple. The final day, the 7th of June, 1954, Turing spent the evening alone in his modest home at 43 Adlington Road, Wilmslow. He ate an apple. He worked on some notes. He may have written one final formula. By morning, he was gone. Police found him in bed with the apple beside him, partially eaten. The inquest ruled it suicide by cyanide ingestion. But the apple was never tested, and some who knew him believed it may have been accidental fumes from his home laboratory's experiment, perhaps. His mother refused to accept suicide. Some colleagues whispered of state involvement. Others believed he simply gave up. No note, no goodbye. There was no farewell, no letter, no closing line. Only silence and an unfinished body of work. A symphony interrupted. The machine that outlived the maker. Turing's machines, the bomb, the early computers, the theoretical models would all live on. His own life was declared non-viable by the country he once helped save. He died as he lived, misunderstood, ahead of his time, asking questions that no one dared to answer. Part 20. Reconstructing Turing, a dramatic monologue from the mind of Alan Turing. A Mind in Silence, Alan Turing, the 6th of June, 1954, imagined monologue. Interior. A quiet evening in Wilmslow, a study bathed in soft lamplight. Alan sits alone beside his desk. Papers are scattered. A flask of cyanide sits next to mechanical parts. He speaks slowly, clearly, almost mathematically, but not without emotion, They used to ask me what I was trying to build. Is it a machine? Is it a mind? Is it some kind of code? And I would always answer the same, I'm trying to understand what makes thought tick. I was good at clocks as a boy. Took one apart before I could read a full book. Time always fascinated me. It moves forward irreversibly, just like a program once it's begun. People think I'm obsessed with machines, but I never loved the machines. I loved what they might become. I loved the idea that thought, this squirming, shifting thing, could one day be modeled, replicated, maybe even improved. And that terrified some people. They gave me medals in secret. Then, shame in public. They praised my equations. Then, rejected my truth. I broke the German Navy's codes, but I couldn't decode the law that said I was a criminal. You can win a war, but you can't always win against ignorance. They asked me if machines could think. I ask, can nations? Can a government feel regret? Can a court understand irony? Because I did everything I was taught to do. Obey logic. Tell the truth. Be precise. Never lie. And for that I was made into a ghost. He sits again. His tone softens. But perhaps I will not vanish. Perhaps someday a child will write her first line of code and not even know that I once wrote the first. Perhaps she'll ask her teacher, can a machine dream? And the teacher will smile and say, that question, that's a Turing question. If I am remembered at all, let it not be for being clever. Let it be for wondering aloud. Let it be for loving in silence. Let it be for building a machine to answer a question I was never allowed to ask. They said, don't speak, but I have spoken. In code, in logic, in math, in machines that still hum with life, I will be silent now, but I was never quiet.